Boris, Xavier, really excited to be chatting with both of you. A lot of things to discuss here. I want to start with a big sporting event that happened earlier in the week, the Mexican and U.S. men's national teams squaring off in a pretty big final on Sunday night. Boris, I know you were keeping an eye on it. Xavier, you were born in Mexico before coming to the U.S. When El Tri and the U.S. meet on the pitch, where do your allegiances lie?
You know, you're right. It was an incredible game, very exciting. I actually had a number of folks at my house. We were watching it, and it's always a challenge for me. I was born in Guadalajara, so I have certainly the Mexican heart is always leaning me towards El Tri. But, you know, I grew up here in the U.S., and to see the U.S. do well in soccer is phenomenal. My son, my 12-year-old son, Javi, is a bit more focused on basketball, but he watches every game that I do when it comes to the Mexican national team and the U.S. men's team. Listen, I was glad to see an incredible game. That's really what I think. I think soccer won is what I talk a lot about. And I think soccer in the U.S. won, and I'm excited about that.
I think you're right about that. And I'll toss out a number here that won't surprise either of you, but might surprise some people who are watching. 4.2 million people tuned in on Univision to watch the match. That's the Spanish language telecast here in the U.S. We're not going to know how many tuned in on the English language telecast with CBS Sportsnet. I think the three of us know it's a lot less than 4.2 million. And that seems like a good kind of jumping off point to talk about diversity in sports. And Boris, I want to bring you in here. Those numbers obviously signify the strength of the Spanish-speaking community here in the U.S., but also the importance, I think, of having a sport that attracts a wide, diverse group of people. And if that game was catered just to the English language majority in America, that's 4.2 million people, obviously, that may want to watch it that aren't getting the opportunity, right?
100%. And I agree with Javier 100% as well. Football, soccer won in the U.S. And it's very exciting when you see that the level of play is up to par and that you're battling, you know, that match till the end and having it be, you know, for an actual trophy makes it even more interesting. And to your point, Eben, and we've talked about it a lot of times, I think that game hit on the sweet spot of the soccer fan in the U.S. and the future American sports fan in general, to be honest. It's young, it's diverse, it's multicultural, and it's heavy influenced by Hispanics, you know, either first generation or second, third generation. And when you see that, you know, passion coming out in a battle like that one, you know, it's just very empowering. And for me, working in the sport in the country, I've lived here, you know, for 15 years, similar to Javier. I mean, I was born in Colombia and, you know, did my rounds at Univision for almost 8 years. So seeing the evolution of the sport and the evolution in general of this young, diverse demographic, it's something that is incredibly exciting. And you know, not to get ahead of the conversation, but when you look at, you know, what's coming up with the 2026 World Cup, that's exactly the demo that you want to have, you know, pumped about having the World Cup in the three countries. And it's just, you know, for football, for the sport, you know, it's incredibly exciting.
And given that, Boris, you're in charge, LaLiga North America has the commercial rights to LaLiga in Canada, the U.S., Mexico. Given that there are aspects of soccer that are already extremely diverse, what are the diversity challenges for you thinking in that run-up to the World Cup? Is it more English language speakers? Is it other types of diversity? What's the biggest kind of diversity pinpoint for you right now?
Listen, at the end of the day, it's no different from the same diversity challenges that any other sport, you know, or form of entertainment might have in the country. And is, you know, we want to have on our screen people that represent the broad audience that's watching and that's consuming it. And yes, you know, La Liga and soccer in general tends to appeal more to Hispanics, but we don't just want to focus on that, you know, Hispanic demo. We want to make it as broad as possible. So, you know, we actually have a content studio that's based out of Guadalajara that's producing 20 digital shows a week, and it's using talent that represents the audience and the demographic that we want to, you know, appeal to. We have an anchor show with Aaron West that's appealing to that young, non-Hispanic audience that we wanna reach. We have another show with Rodolfo Landeros, Mexican-born, has been living in the U.S. for a while. That's appealing to the Hispanic demographic. So just in general is we want to make sure that the talent that we use, the content that we push out, just reflects the audience that we want to reach across the board.
Javier, when you hear Boris talk about kind of where soccer is, and you think about hockey, which certainly with Hispanic communities, I think has a bit to go before it reaches that level. What are step number 1 or 2 as you think about kind of the ways to get hockey on steps towards the right track here?
Well, I'm gonna borrow a lot of what Boris is saying because it's what I talk a lot about. I borrow the line from the great Wayne Gretzky of, in order to be good, go to where the puck is going. So when you look at where the puck is going in America, I constantly talk about this. It's young, it's female, it's diverse, and in places like Arizona, as in many other major metro areas, it's Latino. It's also purpose-driven and tech-enabled. And so you have to go there. You have to target those growth cohorts. That's the vision that we have here, is for us to say, how can we be a bridge for you as a corporate partner, as a community partner, as a fan, and how do we help you connect with those growth cohorts? So everything that Boris has really alluded to for soccer, it really also pertains to everything we're trying to do in hockey. And yes, it has not fallen on deaf ears for Alex and I. Alex Morello, obviously a trailblazer in his own right, as the first Latino owner in the NHL, myself as the first Latino president, CEO. We know that hockey has definitely not had its focus on these growth cohorts historically, but we think that is the opportunity. That is the growth potential. That is where we are going. And, as a young sports fan, shortly after I came to the United States, when I came here at the age of 5, I started watching basketball. And when I started watching basketball, I watched that tape delay game of the LA Lakers and the 76ers in 1980 with a young Magic Johnson. And I didn't see a lot of Latinos in the stands. I didn't see a lot of Latinos, obviously, on the court or really engaged in the sport. If you look at it now, the Suns just played last night. If you looked at that audience, it was incredibly young, diverse, and female, and all these cohorts that are growth in America were definitely part of that experience. And so that's what we're looking for. Where it starts, Eben, is to be intentional. Is to say, this is what we want to do. This is not ancillary to the business plan, right? I talk a lot about catering to the Coyote fan and the Coyote fan in waiting. And it doesn't mean that I have to turn my back on the historic, traditional, very rabid fan base. It means that we're opening our doors, extending our hands towards where the growth is and that Coyote fan in waiting.
And you took this job last June, which, by the way, what a time to take over a live events business. Can you give me, from a specific standpoint, I know you did a lot around Hispanic Heritage Month in September and October last year, but specifically, what does it look like to find those Coyotes fans in waiting? Is it multilingual content? Is it doing live events in communities that you weren't in before? What specifically is the plan to find those people?
Well, COVID definitely hurt a lot of our plans that we are definitely implementing, because the reality is you have to be present. You have to be engaged, and you have to actually be there in order to make a difference. But I think it started with the very first thing that I was really excited about, which is we did community clinics in very predominantly Latino neighborhoods that I guarantee you those kids had never seen a puck. They had never held a stick. They had never thought about hockey in their personal, athletic journey. And just by being present and saying, you are part of our mindset, what we're thinking about. You are part of our pack. You are part of our fanatic, rabid fan base. And it's just up to us to extend our hand and to open the doors. And so it started with that, is in intentionally going and actually introducing street hockey. I talk a lot about the continuum of hockey. It doesn't just have to be ice hockey. It can start with a stick, a ball, blacktop, and net. Right. And that really introduces. So that was a very specific thing. There was also a very specific and intentional outreach to the leadership, the Latino leadership. Someone asked me, "Why you're Latino? Why do you need a Latino advisory council?" I said, because I can't be the only voice saying this is important to us. It's about embracing the leadership in this community and saying you are part of what we want to accomplish. So that was something else. And then finally, you are right. We had just this very comprehensive outreach for Hispanic Heritage Month. We did things culturally with Sugar Skull goalie masks that we auctioned off. We worked with a lot of the Latino-owned restaurants that were so hard hit with COVID by buying and amplifying. The one thing that we can do is amplify and bring attention to these businesses, but also to use our buying power to help lift them up.
So this is an impossible question, but I'm curious to hear both your thoughts. There's obviously a lot of different types of diversity. There's age, there's sexuality, there's race, there's gender. And within your organizations, if there's a pyramid, there's a bunch of different tiers where you can think about diversity. There's your executive class, your employees, your contractors, and at the bottom I'll put fans because it's the biggest group. How do you guys, they're all important, obviously. How do you think about where to prioritize? What type of diversity is most important for me right now? And two, where within my organization do I want to prioritize that at the current moment?
That's a great question. I'll take a stab at it. And from the point of view, not just from a U.S. operation, but just a global operation like we have with LaLiga. The most important thing is diversity of thought and point of view, and then of course making sure that diversity of thought and points of view is reflected. Again, I go back to the specific example and the talent that we use in our content, that it reflects the audience that you're reaching and the reality of the demographics that you're serving. You cannot, and to Javier's point, and I applaud him for this, not just because he's a Latino, he has the answer on how to reach Latinos. Just we're not a monolith, as it has been proven time and time again. And so even, we might have an individual experience as a Latino, as a Hispanic in the country, in the same way that we might have experiences from people that have lived, in other countries that are working from Madrid, for example, for LaLiga. But really what you want to do is have boots in the ground and multiple points of view that can be, your check and balance. And so if I'm here coming up and saying, guys, I know what to do in the US to reach Hispanics because I've been living here for 15 years, that I also have a check and balance, with other people that might have lived different experience of being a Latino in the US. We spent a lot of time at the beginning when we launched the joint venture in 2018, just visiting the key markets that we were drawing up and talking to people and understanding, all right, if you're a first generation Latino or Hispanic from Mexican descent, you have, that natural connection with soccer. You have, your number one team might be Chivas or America or Cruz Azul, or, you pick it. And 95% of the time, the second team was a La Liga team. And that's a very different, approach to super serve that fan that maybe second generation Colombian Hispanic. So you really need to understand, and I'm picking on the race topic just as an illustration, but the same applies on gender, sexuality, you name it, Eben, as you were going down the list. Again, the key for us has been, and not just in the US, but honestly in every market that we've entered, making sure that we have a diverse, pool of people that will provide different points of view and thoughts.
And echoing a lot of what Boris is saying, I think it is a tough question, Eben, because I think it permeates everything that we try to do. And we talk a lot about inclusion. What I talk a lot about is, can I put great individuals with diverse voices at the table of decision making? That's what I'm looking for. I'm very proud of the fact that in very short order, only been in this job for a year, we've built out the largest female executive front office in the NHL, and here of any of the teams here in the Valley in Arizona. It is important for me as I say, hey, I'm really targeting the female cohort, the family cohort. I want those voices at the table of decision-making authority, not just to be able to give me an idea, but to actually go and execute that. So it's who you have at your decision-making table. And then I also talk about the inclusion of, out in the world. Who are we targeting? And so again, what does that look like? And how are we intentional about it? How are we authentic about it? And how are we innovative and think outside the box in order to try to not only target, but really truly embrace, open our doors, extend our hand in terms of creating that level of diversity and that level of inclusion.
In a way, it sounds like you're both saying that it starts kind of at the top just because it all filters down. And Javier, I would imagine the message from the Coyotes might sound differently if the team didn't have all those female executives and a Hispanic owner and a Hispanic president. I would imagine just seeing it at the top of an organization will affect kind of all the things below it, be it other employees or even fans and other folks in the community as well.
Yeah, I've had the great opportunity to sit on the executive inclusion committee for the NHL. I think the league itself is recognizing where we need to go in terms of not only who are the faces and what are the folks that are in those decision-making authority positions, but also who we're targeting as we think about making this sport even more relevant, even more top of mind, even more part of the engagement, the athletic engagement in the U.S. and in Canada and North America. And so, yes, I do think it's important to have people in those seats raising these issues and making it important, making it central so that it becomes normalized. I talk a lot about that, about normalization of these conversations.
Boris, when you're talking corporate deals, where you've negotiated a number of them in the U.S. and they're coming to Mexico as well, how much is diversity a part of that conversation? Do companies like PointsBet and Verizon, do they want to know the full demographic of what your fan base is, what you're doing to expand that? Is that a core part? Is it the part? Is it just a small part?
It's a core part. I'll tell you, and Eben, because we've talked about it a lot, but I'll tell you the Verizon experience. They're our biggest corporate partner. They're great to work with. They're committed not only to soccer, but very intentionally to a Hispanic, diverse demographic. And so when we started talking to them, 3 years ago, we were showing them the numbers that we were getting with the audience that we reach and the type of demo. And we really spent a lot of time going through the specific research that we had done that I was mentioning before, and the difference in how we were reaching Hispanics or first generation, second, third generation, and how, doing it through soccer and through a property like LaLiga really, increased that engagement that we were looking for, again, with existing fans and future fans. And they immediately latched onto it. And, they've been a partner for 3 years. We launched a couple months ago, actually, an esports program with them that's focused on Hispanics as well. And so they walk the path with us so much, and they trust the audience that we get and how we intentionally go for them, that we've been able to expand our business, not just to the traditional, sponsorship and corporate partnership, but specifically helping them reach, other demos through different products that might be tangentially related to soccer. And again, the esports project is one that's very specific. The other example that I can give you is, our the broadcast deal with ESPN, very specific, since the beginning of the conversations. They were very intentional about going after that Hispanic user, as a way to boost Hispanics on ESPN Plus. And so, of course, when we start having our conversations, it's not just about having Real Madrid, Barcelona, Messi, Ramos, Benzema. Yeah, that's all great. But, why are we appealing in the way that we are to Hispanics, and how do we complement the organic, affinity that we might have into intentionally reaching them? So it's never been an afterthought. It's never been we're going after the soccer fan and, hey, by the way, we actually reach Hispanics. This is our core audience. It's young, it's diverse, and it's multicultural.
Javier, for you guys, you've been in the position for about a year, so I'm curious how you think the efforts you guys are doing from a grassroots level, how that affects kind of the bigger parts of the business, whether it's the media stuff that Boris was just talking about, or even kind of big ticket sponsorship, et cetera.
Sure. I mean, listen, our three key pillars are impact, inclusion, and innovation, and they all really interact very much so. We've fully embraced our role as a community leader and as a business leader, and really saying, the vision we have is to leverage the power of sports to really, inspire excellence, but also to impact others. I didn't come from sports. the reason I'm sitting here after a 25-year career in business and investment and banking is because Alex Morello called me and he says, the vision that I have is how can we use sports to make a difference in people's lives? And I think you can help us get there. And not only that, I think this is where you're at in your life. And sports has this very unique voice and very unique power. And so everything revolves around that, saying, okay, how can we, touch this audience, touch this community? And so the grassroots efforts, whether it be in our youth hockey programs, whether it be through our philanthropic and volunteer efforts, it positions us as saying, you know what, the Coyotes care. They think about me. And it also extends to what we talk about with our business partners. What Boris was just saying with Verizon, I think that's every brand. Every brand is looking for growth. Every brand is looking for where is the puck going and how can you help solve that for me? How can you be part of that journey for me? And so that's what we pitch to them. As much as we pitch excellence on the ice, off the ice, we say we can be that bridge to you, whether it's to young people, to females, to Latinos, to folks that are purpose-driven, because that really is what we're leading with. And how do we do so in a very tech-enabled manner? How do we do it? How do we not only deliver content, but how do we deliver engagement? That's as much as what they're looking for as anything as a brand, is we want to be engaged in the lives of the people who support us. And so it all is intertwined. It's all top of mind. And that's the vision that we have, because at the end of the day, I talked to my general manager this morning and we're going through a coaching search. I can't really influence. I don't know how to skate. So I can't really help us win. Right. But what can I help us do? I can position us as an organization that is top of mind when it comes through our fans in waiting, and our partners.
Guys, we could do this all day. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the time. Xavier Gutierrez, Boris Gartner, thank you both for joining us. This was fun.
Eben, thank you so much.
Thank you, Evan. Boris, great times.
Thank you, Javier.